Event management. Maybe for some of you, it feels like, hey, we're finally here. We finally got to this point. And at, that's how we feel in the industry a lot of times. So, what have we done in our coursework? We've talked about an overview. We've talked about success. We've talked about designing facilities. We talked about their infrastructure and operations. We've talked about booking events, and now we're finally talking about running the event. And that's so much of my career that the day-to-day stuff, the doing the facilities, doing all those things takes a lot of time. And sometimes you're just sitting around and waiting, and you're doing the event briefs, the building briefs, or the event manuals, and you're preparing and you're doing your timing sheets, and you're doing all those things. And that's the hard work. And when the event comes, usually the event day for me in events and facilities in pro sports and in college athletics was hectic leading up to it, especially if I had a lot of work to do on the facility side. Could be very, very hectic. But once the game started, there's kind of nothing to it. Usually during the event was the easiest part for me. Occasionally things would go wrong. I can tell you stories about all kind of crazy things that have happened during games, and that I've dealt with fans and even on the court, earrings stuck in basketballs and things like that. But 99% of the work happens beforehand. And so it's the kind of the same thing with event management. It's all about the preparation. It's about leading up to it, doing those event manuals and those briefs and those rundowns and having everything lined up, and then being flexible for it to all fall apart. I've planned out events down to the second. We knew when the national anthem was going to happen, when the teams were going to take the field, when we would start for the TV broadcast, and then it didn't work out, right? Something happened, whether it was the weather or a team bus broke down or whatever. Real life often gets in the way. And so managing events in sports is often hypocritical because we plan things out so much, and you have to be meticulous, but you have to be flexible and you have to be ready to change everything on a moment's notice. And so that's something that's often happened. Again, things usually happen kind of before the game, and once you get going, it's kind of a sense of relief. But that's always been kind of my experience, that you plan and you plan and you plan and you work with the stakeholders and you work with whoever you book the event with, and you've worked with the visiting, if it's your own event, you've worked with the visiting teams and the officials, and then you just respond to things on the fly. But again, once the ball is tipped, once the kickoff happens, once the first serve, once the gun goes off of the track meet, whatever it is, things kind of calm down a little bit. And so, really, event management, like facility management, is planning, making sure that you've done the right things in advance, and then being reactionary. And sometimes those plans go out the window, but you've got to be ready to respond. And so that's really what event management is in a nutshell. And it involves, of course, really strong communication. Again, we've talked about this with our event manuals and things like that. It's making sure that everyone knows where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to be there. It's going back to previous modules and being properly staffed, right? Knowing how many ushers you should have, how many ticket takers, how many security people, both bag checkers and on the field, knowing what your numbers are. So that you're not blindsided and that things go right. And maybe you could cut those down. Maybe over the course of the season, you see, I don't need an usher over here. Or, hey, it looks like a lot of people are trying to get on the field here. Maybe we need an extra security person. You adjust, and you let your events be living, breathing things that can change over time, especially if you're doing them repeatedly as we would in college athletics, where we're running 8 football games, 20 to 40 men's and women's basketball games, 25 home baseball games. You kind of get in this rhythm, but you can never get complacent. You've got to always sort of change the events, and change the way you're doing things, to stay on top of things and use those best practices. So that's really it. And it's complicated and it's working with a lot of people, but really, it's planning and being well prepared, and then being prepared for when that plan kind of fails on you, and you've got to make things up as you go. So that's event management, and like I said, it's the most fun part. I Nothing like running an event for me, but it's also the most brief part usually of these jobs. That those event days come and go pretty quick, and then you're sitting there waiting for the next one.